Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Thursday, October 10th. It's day 370 since October 7th of last year. I'm now in London. It's actually quite cold here for meetings, but I wanted to let you know I'm going to start doing the Thursday updates a little differently. Not this week, but next week. I'm going to start live recording our Thursday morning briefings. We give a Thursday briefing that's about 25 minutes, and we're going to start recording those. So the Thursday videos are going to be a summary of the news of all the past week. That way, if people want to know what's going on, they can just watch a longer video once a week instead of having to, not that anybody watches a video every day. I think maybe a few of you do, but I know these updates are long. I do them as much as a spiritual discipline for myself as sharing information. I hope we use the information for knowledge, but also for prayer to inform us in our advocacy. So, I wanted to give you some updates on Lebanon, on what's happening in Israel, and of course, what's happening in Gaza. A lot of my updates today come from the Wall Street Journal. The Israeli offensive on Lebanon has left a quarter of the country under evacuation orders. The Israeli military has warned residents in South Lebanon against returning to their homes. One of the things that's been the most underreported is that when I was in Beirut in January, there were already 100,000 people in Lebanon who'd been displaced from their homes. There were entire villages. Now, these were small villages. Maybe they only had 50 or 60 people or 100 people, but there were entire villages that had already been destroyed by January. And now we're talking about 1 million plus people, 25% of the entire state of Lebanon under evacuation orders. How Iran is shifting its strategy. There's an article out in the Wall Street Journal called How Iran Uses Criminal Gangs in the West to Target Its Enemies. And what it's talking about is how Iran has faced setbacks in Gaza and in Lebanon. What's interesting is I do think there's a bit of an overstatement. I know Iran has supported Hamas, but Hamas in large part has not been a proxy for Iran. That's, I think, been a false analysis in the news. Hamas's history in Gaza has been with the Muslim Brotherhood, which actually was more connected to Egypt and the former regime in Egypt before Sisi. But anyway, after setbacks in Lebanon and Gaza, Tehran and the Iranians have found new ways to attack Israel. And so this whole article is about the way that Iran has been recruiting. The article says that they're allying with drug lords and, quote, gangsters to go after Jewish and Israeli targets around the world. And where you will see this in the news is when you hear about isolated incidents. So there was a hand grenade that was thrown at an Israeli embassy in Stockholm. There are actually individuals that are being recruited in Western countries that are a part of drugs or gangs or, kind of the underground, if you will. And they're being recruited by Iran to then attack Jewish interests around the world. There was another incident where a Spanish politician was shot in the face in broad daylight. Another issue is that the United States is seeing an opening chance to sideline Hezbollah politically in Lebanon. Listen to the Biden administration's strategy. They want to use Israel's offensive militarily against Hezbollah to end Hezbollah's militant long-run dominance. The U.S. wants to help promote an election. There's been an empty seat in the president. There needs to be a presidential election in Lebanon. And U.S. and Arab officials are really trying to make that happen since Hezbollah is so weak. And so what they're talking about is they're talking about using military pressure to try to overthrow Hezbollah. And I've been saying this all along, might does not make right. Certainly live by the sword, die by the sword. But I think the Biden administration is 100% wrong. They're right that this is an opportunity, but not by supporting Israel's military campaign. The opportunity is not by dominance. The opportunity is that there is a huge vacuum and a huge need in Gaza, in Lebanon, throughout other parts of the Middle East to rebuild, to positively invest, not to further militarize and further destroy. The more the US supports Israel, the more militarization there is, the more militancy there will be, the more Israel will be a threat. I mean, Israel thinks it has an existential threat now. Just wait until this generation that has lost its parents, that's seen such death and destruction in Gaza, grows up. And so this idea that military might is going to, overthrow Hezbollah and the U.S. is going to, support, a new president in Lebanon, I just think is another miscalculation. I mentioned I just had a conversation with, a foreign service officer who's in a very high-ranking position in the U.S. He has a security background. He said this moment checks off every single box and is ripe for further recruitment and militancy. Rather than more offensive in the military, this is an opportunity. Lebanon needs to be rebuilt. Gaza needs to be rebuilt. We need to invest constructively. I would say the same thing for churches as well. If not, the US and Israel are only creating more enemies. And so I think that's really, really something that we have to work against. All the while, the U.S. is willing to support more and more aggression by Israel in the Middle East. And at the same time, the U.S. is frustrated by Israel's reluctance because Israel is not sharing their plans on whether or not they're going to retaliate and to what degree against Iran. Also, there's a sign that the war against Lebanon is expanding, not decreasing. Israel had more strikes against Damascus in Syria. They were targeting a Hezbollah weapons smuggler. The strike came as Israel expanded its air and ground offenses also in Lebanon. And Israel's now signaling that they have plans to involve their Navy in the invasion in Lebanon. The US and France are trying to work on a ceasefire declaration for a short-term ceasefire deal related to the North in the hopes that it will create the opportunity to pursue a diplomatic solution. And again, this is contradictory. You don't send more military and then say we want a diplomatic solution. So I would just say to the Biden administration, stop contradicting yourself. The US is trying to use Israel's offensive to end the group's dominance, as I just mentioned, to elect a new president. And the Saudi officials are saying that this initiative has, their support. I did mention a few days ago, there was a reporter in Lebanon who was arrested. He holds a British passport, but he's also Israeli. He said that he's a reporter. He was just deported after his arrest in Beirut, Israel just confirmed. An IDF sergeant major was killed in South Lebanon today. The IDF also said it struck a former school in Deir al-Balah. And displaced people. Oh, this is in Gaza. I'm sorry, I put this in the wrong place. Deir al-Balah is in Gaza. So another school in Gaza was struck today. Of course, they said they were going after Hamas militants. The party line is numerous steps were taken to mitigate the risk of harming civilians. 28 people were killed in that attack in Gaza. 54 people were wounded. So shifting gears towards Gaza, there have been another discussion about additional humanitarian pauses, that it's about time for that second round of polio vaccinations to start, targeting roughly 600,000 children. They're set to start in mid-October on the 14th. There's an inquiry by the UN related to reports that found both Israel and Hamas have committed war crimes against humanity in this ongoing war. The death toll in Gaza is now over 42,000 people. Lord have mercy. Israel's cabinet is meeting tonight to discuss a response to Iran's previous attack. Raphael Mordecai Fishoff, who's 35 years old, died of his wounds that were obtained during a stabbing attack that was in central Israel on Wednesday of this past week. The Shin Bet said that they arrested 5 Palestinian citizens of Israel, identified in the news as Arab Israelis from Taipei. So if they're Arab Israelis, they're Palestinian citizens of Israel. It says they're from Taipei, suspected of planning a terror attack on a mall in Tel Aviv. They also arrested a Palestinian citizen of Israel who was an educator. She was arrested on Monday at the request of Ben-Gvir, the national security minister, for a TikTok video that said she was celebrating October 7th. The police said she was under restrictive conditions. She also had posted other TikTok videos, one of which expressed sorrow over the death of Yonat Or, who was a Be'er Eri resident who was murdered on October 7th, where she said she was heartbroken. So that incident and investigation's ongoing. Gulf states are lobbying for the U.S. to stop Israel from attacking Iran's oil sites. They're worried if the Iran oil sites are attacked, their own oil sites would come under fire. The commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards had a heart attack during an interrogation, which essentially, in my reading, means he was tortured. That's just that's what I read into that. That's a very interesting report. We've heard that there was no way the Hananiah attacks could have happened had there not been an insider, someone who, was working with the Israelis from inside of Iran. So the commander of the Iran's Revolutionary Guards, being interrogated is a very, very, very big deal. There was even speculation that Iran might have committed the assassination themselves as a goodwill gesture to, show the U.S. and the West that they're serious about, shifting gears. Now, that was totally gossip. I have nothing to substantiate those claims, but the interrogation of this commander does show that they seem to think that someone inside assisted Israel in the assassination as well. It's now, who knows what time it is. It's about 9 o'clock here in London. About an hour ago, an alert came through that said there was another airstrike in central Beirut. 11 people were killed, 48 injured. The AP News reported that. And this did not hit Western media yet, but L'Orient today reported that there was an attack on a church in Lebanon last night. It was in East Sor in South Lebanon. The death toll has risen. 7 people were killed. And just to close, I wanted to let you know some encouraging news. I just found this out actually in the midst of recording this from Beirut, Lebanon, despite the fact that we heard a few days ago that Father Gregorius Salum was killed in a bombing. He's a Greek Orthodox priest in South Lebanon. He is alive. He's receiving treatment in an intensive care unit in the St. George Hospital in Beirut. There were reports that he had been killed. He and his family have been confirmed that he is under medical care after the Israeli airstrike. He was definitely injured. And so we will keep you updated about that. He's a priest of St. George Parish in the town of Ibn al-Saki. His wife, who's a presbyter, was also hospitalized. She is in critical condition. The announcement that he had died and his whole family had been killed, we actually received it directly from the church. And so we know that the church was attacked. We know he was injured, and we will continue to keep you informed in that regard. So may God go before us in the name of Christ. Amen.